Hello everybody, I have another Scuffed meta snapshot for you today. As always, we're going to be looking at some of the better or most played decks at the moment and give a little quick rundown of what they're trying to do. Now, of course, disclaimer, these won't be the exact list that people are running. I have just kind of improvised some of them on the fly from things that I've seen on Pro Ladder, and of course some new stuff might come out in the near future. That's always very possible to happen, so don't use this as your only resource to find what the good decks are. We'll also be talking about places you can find different versions, because there are decks that I won't talk about here that are definitely quite powerful, and I'd urge you to check them out if you're interested. But with that being said, let's jump in to the first faction, and we have Nilfgaard, of course, which pretty much only has one viable archetype, I want to say, at the moment, although that might be a bit unfair. There is Shoop Nilfgaard, which is still quite popular with Morvran, of course. Usurper is sometimes played. Not necessarily the best deck ever for Nilfgaard, but it's quite popular. And also there is, of course, the Witcher Morvran deck, which I haven't played personally. I don't know how strong it is exactly, so I don't want to comment on that. But pretty much the standard sort of Morvran deck is with Horn. It's with all the regular packages that Nilfgaard wants to run, infiltrators, sergeants, slave drivers, locks, knights, etc. Leo, you've got the Peter, you've got the Traherne, you've got the Orc Seret Letho package as well, Unicorn Kyrenex, and Roach Asaya, of course, to finish that off, with Witches for Thinning, Slave Inventory, to counter Sabrina and just do some cool stuff there. Pretty straightforward deck. It's, of course, really built around just value and locking, controlling the opponent's engines if they are an engine deck, and as a result it has quite a good matchup against monsters. A lot of the locks are very good against the Thrive units, and you can knock down their big units with things like Leo and the Peter, while of course, just making sure you thin and get that Commander's Horn. So this is probably Nilfgaard's best option. It's just kind of a mid-rangey, lock focus, sort of control-y, but also big value, point deck. So that's kind of the main player for Nilfgaard at the moment. They of course do have Shoop as well as another option, which will be similar to how it was last patch, and Witchers, which I'm not sure how good they are. Go on Gwent up and find a Witcher deck on there and try it out if you want to experiment. I won't be showing that one here. Anyway, let's move on to the next faction, which will be Skellig. Now this is probably considered to be the best faction right now. There's so many different types of Skellig decks you can run. There is a new Coral, of course, which is meaning she now is only 9 provisions and doing a very powerful discard effect on 2 cards and dealing damage when you discard specials. So Coral is effectively a stronger burner, effectively, now that she's been changed, and that means you've got a lot of Skellig lists running her and running a package with... Yeah, they are running often the specials that you don't really necessarily want to play in a lot of games, things like Demetrian Bomb and Clear Skies. They're very good against specific things like artifacts and weather, but when you're not up against them, you don't need them. So you can use Coral or your leader to discard those and swap them for better cards while gaining a bit of extra value. This particular version of Bran is focused around Jutta, or Jutta, however you pronounce her, and she is, of course, damaging herself. She can then be resurrected with Sigdrifa's Right, and it does not cause that deploy effect to happen when you summon a warrior, so effectively you can get a 12-point play from that. You obviously have Hjalmar, Veterans, and some other combos, Caldwell, to kind of get the most out of playing Jutta with Spores, which is a very powerful 4-provision card. It can often get 6 points on that Jutta, or even more. And if not, you can just get rid of it with Coral, with your leader, with Burner. So this is one version of that kind of tempo Bran with Coral. There is another one which is sort of lippy focused. You have a lot more maybe high power cards focusing on playing them early and then lippying them back into your deck. Similar in playstyle to this one, but slightly different. I think Shinmiri has a version of that on his YouTube channel. If you would like to check that out, go ahead and do that. But this is sort of the Bran Jutta, Jurden is another option in this deck. I was running that before Camby, and a lot of people do run Jurden in this deck. That's kind of a tech choice, but pretty powerful deck overall. Does have very good amount of value with Horn and all these other tools, and just good at what it does. A lot of points. I'm sure you've seen similar things at this point on ladder. So that's one option for Skellig. They then also have Crack doing similar things with their own horn and with their own coral, although I'm not sure how exactly strong this is compared to the Bran. I think Bran is probably a little bit better just because it's more reliable in finding those cards and then discarding them because you have that leader synergy. Of course, you also get a bit more value with the Bran with discards from coral, burner, and everything else. That being said, Crack is definitely still very powerful, and I've seen a lot of Crack Lippy decks as well as regular Crack Horn. Crack Lippy might even be more popular. I don't have, again, the deck for that, but it will be very similar to this, but swapping out maybe, you know, the Coral package and the maybe Professional or whatever it is to replay Horn with that Lippy, replay your Unicorns and all that different stuff. So that's another option for Skellig is Lippy Crack or just this regular Crack Horn. So kind of for, I guess you could call it reasonably, if not very strong decks for Skellig, which are quite popular at the moment. As always, I'm not going to say, you know, this is tier 1, 2, whatever. You can try them out for yourself. I think it should be pretty obvious that Skellige's, you know, reasonably strong this patch. Monsters as well. Scoia'tael, not so much. Northern Realms, not maybe so much. And of course Nilfgaard as well, not looking as hot as Monsters and Skellig, but do, you know, play the decks for yourself. Anyway, that being said, we have Northern Realms. Now, most people are playing Adder or Meave at the moment. Adder can be built in several ways. This is a version that I've been playing with Curse Knights and Coldwell and Necromancy, but some Adder decks are not running that package. They're instead running Synthesis maybe to get a bit more finisher value. Maybe they run more engines to hopefully bait removal from the opponent for the Hubert finisher later in the game. That is what this deck is focused around. This is just one iteration of Adder. You can definitely play different stuff in that version of the deck, and Adder, I would say, is probably the strongest way to play Northern Realms at the moment. Yeah, it can definitely put out a large amount of points if your engines are not dealt with, and even if they are, you still always got that finisher on hand with the 8-point Adder alongside, you know, your powerful cards. So, pretty powerful Adder at the moment for Northern Realms. I would say it's probably better than Meave, although there are a lot of people still playing, you know, engine-focused Meave, which we've got here. You know, of course, versions differ on this one as well. We have maybe some different bronzes and golds and whatnot, but the idea is the same. You have a lot of engines, you overwhelm the opponent. The card arts are, bugged again, but what can you do? And yeah, effectively the idea is you're going to overwhelm the opponent with your engines in round 3 and get a big juicy Hubert, which has apparently turned into Avalak, but, you know, whatever. And yeah, similar sort of idea with Adder, but without that Adder leader that synergizes with Hubert. Instead, you have Meave to give your engines more value and rely on the engines to get that Hubert finisher value. So, pretty cool. I think Adder's a little bit more strong, but that's probably a subjective opinion. I mean, it is a subjective opinion, so, you know, make your own mind up on that one. Alright, next up, we do have Scoia'tael. I've seen a lot of people playing Ithne actually recently. Sort of a value-based elf Scorch Ithne seems to be the most popular style of deck. I pulled this pretty much completely off of Gwent up. There was a deck on there, and I've seen people playing very similar stuff on Pro Ladder, and it seems to be a quite okay deck. I would say Scoia'tael's not as strong as some of the other factions, but this is definitely a competent deck, and you can win both long rounds and short rounds, of course, with setting up a large Scorch, getting elf synergy with Isengrim and the rest of your elves, or, you know, finding Geralt professional value on a big target, etc. So, quite an all-round competent deck. Large amount of provisions with Ithne, and that Scorch can be very deadly with her leader ability in certain matchups. Now, the alternative for Scoia'tael is tending to be traps. I've seen a couple of Eldanes, but not really very popular, and Francesca has been played a bit. I do have a video on the YouTube for that if you would like to play Francesca. I don't think she's as strong as these other decks. I'm just going to go back into this and see if we can not have the bugged cards, because it's a bit annoying, but here we go. We've got Trap Brewer, still pretty strong compared to last patch. This version doesn't have Eorveth's Gambit. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And yeah, I mean, the rest of the deck is pretty straightforward. For Trap Brewer, you have, of course, Witches for a bit of thinning. You have the Nivellen to set up those juicy crushing traps, which kind of are the finisher for the deck, alongside Pitfall to maybe snipe a nice unit from your opponent. And a bit of an elf package hybrid to kind of, you know, just get some value from the bronzes standalone. Elven Scouts can be very good sometimes, But yeah, as I said, you can run definitely different things in this. You can run maybe Eorveth's Gambit, Eorveth himself as well, depending on the style of trap deck you want to play. And traps are still quite a powerful deck to be running. They definitely have a powerful long round, and you can blow out your opponent with those, ambush cards in that round 3 a lot of the time. So, finally we have the monsters, of course. How can we forget? So, most of them are running either Gurnakora or Woodland. There are a few different versions. Gurnakora tends to be running not so many of the big dudes. They're focused a lot more on, ghouls now are being procced by stuff like Griffin. Some only run 1. 2 is also okay in certain situations. You have the Crones, of course, for great value. Caldwell can, where is he? Caldwell can be eaten by the Crone, and that usually works quite well. Some are running Doragore to lock him as well. I don't have that in this particular version. Again, it's bugged, irritatingly. So we also have Ice Giant to proc ghouls. You don't have to run those. They might be a little bit inefficient on occasion, but the rest of the deck is going to be Foglets with Cyclops. Some people tend to run Neckers instead. Kind of a judgment call on your part whether you prefer the thinning from those or the Thrive potential. And the rest of the deck's pretty straightforward, Karanex Unicorn and all that stuff. Some Gurnakoras are also running Dragon's Dream and Nivellen as a finisher, so watch out for that. Can be very nasty. If it hits you, you can definitely find a way to slot that in, maybe take out your Geralt and maybe take out Ice Giants or something. Maybe a Ghoul can go away as well if you want to put in Dragon's Dream Nivellen combo. If not, then this is probably the kind of package you want to go with. Griffin is very good with the Gurnakora ability, of course. Cyclops as well has some nice synergy there, and you can use it on Foglet, you can use it on the Gurnakora fruit to get some more Thrive value going. And of course for a bit of removal value. So that's kind of mid-sized Gurnakora, whatever you want to call it. And we finally have Big Woodland, which is still a pretty powerful deck. This is what a lot of people are running. Goliath tends to be dropped now just because it's a bit risky to run it. If you run into tool removal, you're going to be in big trouble all the time. But versions similar to this are typically quite common if you're running into Woodland. Maybe 2 Hounds is a thing that they run, and maybe not so many Werewolves, but depends on the version. They usually aren't running the Ghoul and Griffin package, obviously, because they don't have the Gurnakora ability to synergize with that. So instead they're running the big monsters with the Osrel as a finisher, and some nice value Thrive units with that leader to just close long rounds and short rounds out. It's a deck that still works, of course, even with a couple of nerfs to a few of their cards, such as Spear Tip. But overall, pretty powerful deck. Toss up between that and Gurnakora as to which is better. I would say probably Gurnakora is more popular. Woodland may or may not be better. It's pretty close on that one. Either way, that's probably the best bet for monsters. There are a few Eredin players, although I don't think Eredin's particularly powerful right now. He's alright, he's still about as good as he has been in the past, which is good but a little bit gimmicky, and there are quite a few, Skellig players who can bully him at the moment, especially if they're running Yerden. Your Slizzard is going to get wrecked, your Morntart's going to get wrecked. Nivellen is also now dealing with Morntart Eredin because it's movable on that melee row, being melee locked. So Eredin's not necessarily the best monster deck right now. And yeah, that's pretty much a summation of the good decks at the moment, the most popular decks in the meta. Not exactly the ones that you'll see out there, but pretty close, hopefully, most of the decks that I've shown today. Hopefully that has helped you in some way. If it has, then feel free to like the video, subscribe for more. Let me know what you think about the best, worst decks right now. Hope you enjoyed this Scuffed Meta Snapshot, guys. I'll see you next time.